I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to the Thinking Critical Comic Book Podcast. Today it's time for It's Complicated, when I'm going to bring my good friend Gevian Dargan, former assistant editor at Milestone, the man behind Animated Concepts. Not in the person today. He's in parts unknown. We're going to be talking about something that should get people's blood boiling one way or the other. How you doing, Gevian?
I'm doing well, Wes. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. We'll see how this goes.
That's right.
I imagine everybody remembers the big Me Too movement that permeated through culture, like essentially all over the world. And it went through all the little subcultures and entertainment and comics, and you had it in wrestling, and you just had it everywhere. Corporate America, everything. And there became this mantra. The mantra is always believe women. And I think that's more complicated than that, Gevian. I don't think you can just always believe anybody.
Yeah, honestly, man, it was like that's when that and the formation of Time's Up, which I think is the one that Alyssa Milano was more associated with. And for those who remember, we saw how snake bit that got real quick once a certain Joseph Biden started running for president. But it's like the minute that started becoming the mantra, always believe the woman. That's what even those of us like myself who supported at least the idea or the beginnings of the Me Too movement were like, you guys, this is not good. This is not going to work because people lie. Okay. Sorry, don't know where you were when that memo went out, but people can lie. And this idea of like, you always believe the woman no matter what. Again, it's what I've mentioned on not this show before, definitely in our time on Thinking Critical, is that there was always the pendulum swinging, and the pendulum swings from one extreme to the other. And that was when the Me Too movement, which started off with the right thing, where we had this thing in cultures, and I think in most cultures around the world, where women, when it came to the issues of sexual violence, definitely had marginalized voices. Their voices were marginalized. They were basically subdued and quieted, and not just by men, but also at times other women as well. But and so there's at least some understanding of the pendulum then swinging the other way when those voices want to be heard. But that was just too of an extreme of a position to take, and it just wasn't going to end well. Anybody with half a brain and no agenda could have seen where that one was going. And then it all came to a head when Tara Reid, for those of you who are familiar with her, came out with the accusations against Joe Biden. And then a certain Hollywood actress that you should all be familiar with, Alyssa Milano, showed exactly how hollow and shallow that take was. And then as far as I'm concerned, I mean, it's still going, but it pretty much lost all its credibility from that point forward. So I'm much more of and I don't support Ronald Reagan in anything other than this one saying. I'm much more of a Reagan man with myself when I say trust but verify. That's what the stance is. Trust but verify.
But we're still seeing the fallout from this Gevian. Just recently, we had Frank Gogol. This has nothing to do with sexual harassment or sexual assault, but he was accused of calling someone a racial epithet, and he came out, and this was his response in his defense. And after this, he does go on to say that this woman was lying, but he says, first and foremost, I want to say that when women, people of color, LGBTQIA folks, and other marginalized people speak up, it is vital that we listen to them, which would have been good, and believe them without the verifying. I'm all about listening, but we got to verify the details.
Yeah, so the problem with old Frank is that apparently nobody's ever loved him. Not his parents, not his friends, not his teachers, not his mentors, his employers. No one has ever loved this dude because, for the love of God, for all of the demonstration that you're seeing around this, for all the things that people you've said where they've got busted out by the movement, in some cases rightfully so. And for somebody who, well, he claims he wasn't a big deal writer, but for someone who claims to be a writer to come up with that inarticulate a response, it's just like, dude, unless he was like, I think, because I watched the video when you talked about it, he had to be shook beyond belief to make a statement like that. It's like, bruh, yeah, what it is
almost
that you want
scared to defend himself, Gervain.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, he's just shook.
He wants
he was
to,
just
in his heart of hearts,
shook.
believe all women, even though he goes on to say that she's lying.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's that you take the accusation seriously, which means you investigate it. So that's what, when people have come at me afterwards when I talked about what I believe in cancel culture, and I said, hell yeah, I do. But this part, the thing is, I said, but with some due diligence before you go with canceling. And that's what the whole problem with this is that this is like all somebody has to do is say boo and snap their fingers. And it's like unleash the hounds. And it's like, you cannot do that to people, because the thing is that when it comes to an accusation, the one person who will never be made whole, there's two people who will basically left in some way not being made whole. This is going to come off, this may come off for some people the wrong way. So you have the victim who, in some sense, they will always have the harm that the person has done to them, but at least they have, in some sense, they can get at least the feeling, or in some case, the retribution of justice. Like, in other words, there being some restitution, some penalty, some punishment being handed out. But when it's a false accusation against someone who hasn't done something, there's one thing that person will never get back: their reputation. Their reputation is damaged for the rest of time. And I know this, having been in that situation 3 times within the space of a few years, and I am telling you, I have lost friends behind it. I have lost professional reputation behind it. All kinds of losses in terms of reputational damage. And there is no place that you can go to get that back, because what a lot of times false accusations can, what they work off of is where there's smoke, there's fire. So a lot of people say, well, okay, if there's one claim about him, then there must be 10, or he just didn't get caught on this one, but he did something else, or there must be something to it. Because people wouldn't, it's unusual for people to lie about these kind of things. So when you go to Tarana Burke, who was the founder of the Me Too movement, that's what she said in a program called Investigations by Vice. It was like the 5th episode called Disgrace, because I just watched it earlier today in preparation for this. And what she says is that usually if there's one claim, then there's like 10 others. And it's like, that's the problem when you always go with always believe the woman, because if you go with always believe the woman or the man or the boy or the girl or the dog or whatever it is, whenever you do that, what it means is that there has to be something to it. So even if it doesn't get adjudicated the right way or get investigated the right way, or even somebody says, well, it turns out there was nothing to it, there are always going to be those group of people going to, based on their own life experience or what they observed or what they heard, just if they think at that moment, they're going to say, nah, something happened and he just didn't get caught on this one, but something's wrong with him. So it's always believe the woman was when that movement took a terrible turn, and it was just going to undermine itself. It was just a matter of time.
What's crazy, Gervain, is another problem is you see the accusation, and the accusation itself always gets so much spotlight. It's retweeted 1,000 times, and every comic pro's going in there and talking crap on Frank. And I do not know the validity of the claims against him. If it turns out nothing happened, or when he defends himself, nobody sees it because we're in this 24-hour news cycle, and they've moved on to the next controversy. And he's painted for the rest of his life with the accusation.
Yeah, before we got to a 24-hour news cycle, because see, we as Generation X, I think we've lived through a tremendous amount of change in terms of technology and cultural mores. Even when it wasn't 24-hour news, when it was just newspapers, nobody reads the corrections, okay? Nobody. Nobody goes back. They never do. Nobody goes back and to see that article 2 or 3 months, or whether it's weeks or days, weeks or months later, where they say, oh yeah, by the way, we got this whole thing wrong. And you have people walking around 5 years who just 5 years later just remember the original article. You say, nah, man, they found out that so-and-so was lying about that like 3 weeks ago. They're like, oh, I never saw that, because nobody reads the corrections. Nobody. And that's what the problem is. Like when old Frank, his problem was he just shot himself in the foot. Because he could have just started off with just saying, look, I think her concern should be taken seriously, but I didn't do this.
I want this investigated so I can be clear, because this is bullshit.
That's right. Because I tell people all the time, it's like, if I didn't do something, that's the first, I don't care if it's a cop, a judge, or whoever's talking to me, I didn't do it. Period. Now, if you say, Mr. Dargan, you can't say that, or you're held against, I didn't do it. You stick to that story. And I'm not saying, it's on the record, I did not do this. Not guilty, Your Honor. Nope, go get somebody else. Because the simple fact of the matter is, all And for those of you out there who are either going through this now, haven't gone through it yet, I'm telling you right now, you better watch what you say to people, because the simple fact of the matter is the things that you say when you start getting into this criminal justice system, the only things that can be used are those things that can be used against you. It doesn't matter whether you did it or not. If you say something inadvertent when you think you're trying to prove your innocence, you're just going to use it against you. Because the simple fact of the matter is, even in our justice, all our different little criminal and civil systems right now, there's this same mentality of all they're concerned about is the safety and or security of this one group. Whatever that group may be. It may be a kid at the time, it may be a woman at the time. Sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a poor man, sometimes it's a rich man. But the simple fact of the matter is they are not operating in the sense of seeking truth. They're just operating what I consider basically intellectual and moral laziness to just get the matter disposed and out of the way. But I haven't seen yet where it's been nothing but a bunch of horse trading. And that's it. It's rare that justice actually gets carried out, which justice would be you seek out the truth of the matter and then you basically you put things right. But that is not what's going on in this. And unfortunately, Me Too, it makes a lot of sense because you have centuries. Just don't get around it. Since the human history, where you have had women and other groups, and sometimes, and not just women and other groups, but also men at times, depending on what group you belong to, who basically have been abused, taken advantage of, and they've had no voice to redress the wrongs that have been done to them. But the thing is that the answer to that is not to act in the extreme, at the extreme the other way. The point is to find a balance, to find a way to get to actual justice. And a lot of times what that is you have to let the facts mature first, and then you start, for lack of a better word, adjudicating the matter. But this guy, Frank, I mean, when I heard, I was listening to the video for that one, I was like, who? I had to say, who raised this guy? Who's he been hanging around?
He needed a better advisor. Let's put it that way.
He needed a way. He needs a whole new group of friends, because if he ran that by anybody, now I don't know if he just tweeted it in the moment because he was so scared of how quickly he can get out of control, because it could have got out of control. The simple fact of the matter was,
at that point, that thing had already been liked and retweeted well over 10,000.
He should have just ran that. He should have just ran that by somebody first. Now, sometimes that don't do you no favors either, as we're finding out with old Governor Cuomo in New York right now, because that's what he did. He read his little letter by the chairman of Time's Up. He got himself in trouble and her in trouble. So even when you try to find the right language, it's like, this is everybody's going for broke. It's like this is
because the consequences are so real now, Gervais. Back in the day, if you used a racial epithet, people would think you were a jerk. But now you could lose your entire career. People are very sensitive to these things, and the consequences are so very real that you cannot take these things lightly. You have to take the allegation itself very seriously, and the way that you're defending yourself very seriously. You cannot tell people that they should believe the person that's accusing you if you yourself know that you're innocent.
Oh, exactly. So and I mean, and this is. And what's so funny about it is that I just, what it kind of reminds me of, there was a book I read when I was in high school called Native Son I believe it was by Richard Wright. And much like with Frank here, much like I think it was Bigger was the main, Bigger, I think his name was the main character. Someone will correct me in the comments. But whoever the main character was, a Native Son. When I read that book in high school, I could not for the life of me fathom reacting the way that character did when he thought he was gonna get caught with this drunk white girl that he was bringing into the house. That to me was like beyond my lived experience, behind my sense of comprehension or whatever. But now I'm here in the 21st century, and I just seen the modern day version of Native Son from Google, because I'm like, dude, take a breath, calm down. If you didn't do it, just say like, I appreciate that, if what I did came off a certain way, but that's not how I remember this, and this is what actually happened. It's like that dude he just lost his. And look, and I get what you're saying, because the consequences of it are real, and it doesn't take anything. And I mean, it doesn't take any heavy lifting whatsoever to get one of these things going. I'm telling you, man, it's like
it doesn't even take evidence. It doesn't take.
No, you're right.
Get stained with it. That can be.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't take evidence. It doesn't even take the people who are in charge honoring or going through their own procedures. So like I'll use myself as an example. I think I brought it up before. I'll bring it up again. Like, so one of my wife's co-workers went out and filed for restraining order against me. And it's like, I ain't never know this chick other than one comment I made on a Facebook post. That was the extent of my quote unquote relationship with this person. When somebody files a restraining order against you, in order for the restraining order to legally or technically supposed to go through, you're supposed to have some kind of a pre-existing relationship with them. You have to actually know them. But I tell you what happened though. Not only did I end up under this restraining order for 4 months, I also had to pay all the court fees, basically just to go into a court to have this person who filed a restraining order against me. When they asked them, well, how did Mr. Dargan threaten you? For the person to shrug her shoulders and say, I don't know. And it's like, and the simple fact of the matter is, I should have been in the first place, because at no point did anybody ever establish that I know this chick like that. I don't know her like that. Yeah, now I'm calling her a chick.
There's no standard of evidence to actually prove it to you. Just the accusation was enough.
Just the accusation alone. And this is in a court of law.
Yes.
Where it states
not
clearly.
Not even a court of public opinion. Yeah.
Not even a court of law where they operate like this. So the thing is that, well, both sides, left, right, and in between, everybody's going to take responsibility for this, because this is no different than what y'all did, than what the right did to the poor Dixie chicks. All they did was exercise their right of freedom of speech, say what they say, and they had people out there like almost like back in Nazi Germany, burning records, death threats, getting them thrown off the radio. It's like, yo, dude, everybody's guilty of this. And the thing is, those of us who are still sane, still have some courage, you just have to learn how to start fighting back by it. You have to start fighting back by it. So the one way you fight back against this thing is the way you fight back in any kind of a defamation situation, which is, that is not true. That's it.
You know what's
That's it.
Crazy? I got a story here, Gevian. You're not going to believe this. Well, you will, but you'll believe it, because
I'll believe it.
This is the topic that we're talking on here. You know, I was in intelligence within the United States Air Force for quite some time. When you're intelligence, most of the time, or a lot of the time, you work what's called joint operations, which means you're working with Navy, Army, Marine, sometimes even like Coast Guard, depending on the thing. Could be even, could be like mine operation. You might even be with, the Brits or maybe even some foreign countries, stuff like that. So I would work with the Army a lot. My buddy Dave, who I was good friends with, we used to work out and all that stuff, go running. When he was in the Army's a little different than the Air Force. They wouldn't. The Air Force isn't going to let me go do anything but what they paid me to do, because I got a nice big bonus and all that stuff, and I had a very specialized skill set that they wanted to use. But the Army is way different the way they employ their people. And there was an opportunity for him to go essentially work for the Army version of our OSI, Office of Special Investigations. I can't remember what it's called in the Army, but he got an opportunity to go work there for 6 months. See if he liked it, and then he could go apply for like that special MOS and perhaps go in and be like a special investigator. And he goes in there and he's telling me the story. This female soldier comes up, and there's a witness, and the male witness that she went to this party with, and she says this other soldier sexually assaulted her at the party, and that he witnessed it, and they give the account and everything. And it's very damning. Obviously, you have the victim, you have a first-hand witness that says they saw it. They do all their statements and everything. And he's like, it was open and shut. But we knew we were at a party, so we had to get court order to get the phones. That's the last thing we had to do, just to see if there was any extra evidence that we could put in there and say they did their due diligence. And so they sent over the guys to go get the phones from the two witnesses and the guy that's been accused. So they end up with 3 phones. They look at the accused guy's phone, and he admits himself, I guess, when they did his statement, that he was so intoxicated he doesn't remember what happened. So it was looking very bad for this man. They get his phone. There's nothing on there. Yes, he was at the party. Well, when they get the dude's phone, that was the witness. The witness. Things take a turn for just a little bit different. They go on there, and it turns out that the dude that was accused was passed out in a room at this party, and there's pictures of the witness, the male witness, performing sexual acts on the guy as he's passed out. And then there's further video of the woman also sexually assaulting him as he was passed out. It was open and shut case. If they didn't take any pictures or whatever, there would have been no way for him to refute that. The only reason they got caught in their lie was because they had taken the evidence themselves. Of course, they got charged themselves.
Yep.
Open and shut.
No. And that's the thing is that
why would they even make the accusation if they did it to that person? You can't figure people out.
Yeah, no, exactly. You can't figure people out because the thing was that the fear that kicked into they might get caught, so they had to cover for themselves, which I've dealt with a few people at the time. Is this preemptive? They get into this mode where they think they're going to get caught, so they start doing things preemptively to throw you off the trail, which actually does nothing more than make you realize there's a trail to be followed. I have a stepson. That's exactly how I caught him doing something, because it's like he called me one time, and I was like, this dude, he never calls me. He never calls me. And because of the mere fact that he calls me, I knew something was up, and this whole shit bang went on, and that led to one of the other situations where I got falsely accused of something. But no, that's what it is that the problem with these kind of matters is is that often there are no witnesses to it. It is really always just a thing of he said, she said. And that's why so many of them get disposed the way that they do, where you have people walking around hurt and damaged, and people in some cases getting away with the assault. In some cases people getting away with lying with it, because it's something that does happen in the shadows. And I would recommend to everyone to get, I know some people have a problem with Vice being corporate, but there's one episode that I watched. It's a part of a series on Hulu if you have it. It's called Investigations by Vice. It's episode 5 called Disgrace. And I think they do at least a fairly good job, if not going in depth into the whole dynamics around the Me Too movement and the issues involved. At the very least, it touches on a lot of things that, will hopefully get you at least start thinking differently about it, or at least to research a little bit more. But so much of this is that it happens in a way that there just really aren't any witnesses. There really isn't evidence. Now, in this case, these were just, like you said, it's just a bunch of people like, if they were going to do that, fine. But why would you take the pictures of it? And part of it has to do with power. Part of it has to do with thinking you're going to get away with it. A whole bunch of other nonsense.
Why would you accuse somebody of something you did? It's nuts.
Oh no, I'd love to know why they decided to do that. I mean, when it came to the case of my stepson, but I asked him, well, why did you send a text asking me what time I was going to be home? He just said because he knew he felt like he was going to get caught. That's what it was. He was running a pretty good scam up until that point. But something, you get the heebie-jeebies, you feel like somebody just stepped on your grave, and then you just, instead of you just either backing off, which is what you should do. So, that's what Robert De Niro says. Yeah, when you feel the heat around the corner, just walk away. And some people, they feel the heat around the corner, and they walk right into it. And they panic, and they blah. So, but that whole thing with them taking the pictures, well, that's just trope that, I'll leave it to the psychologist, but I would assume that's just trophy stuff. That's like that, whatever that creepy trophy thing is. It's like, you're taking a picture of something. But the thing is that, just leave the accusations out of it. Why would you throw it under the guy?
They got themselves
caught. Like you said, you just panicked. They got themselves caught. So it's like,
and I'm glad they did. I don't think sexually assaulting a young man while he's passed out is something, I'm glad that they got. But it goes both ways, Gevian. I had a friend, nice lady. She liked to go out and have fun. Sometimes she was at a bar, she'd hook up, whatever. It's none of my business. Now, one night she's at a party, I believe. She ends up being, according to her, sexually assaulted by, I believe, 4 men. She goes to the police, files the police report, goes into the hospital, and all that stuff happens right after this. And there's evidence of it. But, and this is why, perhaps the Me Too movement will, well, not perhaps, likely why it started, exactly probably why it was justified to begin with. They go in, they do the investigation, and when you get the, the defense attorneys in and all that stuff, they're supposed to defend their clients to the best of their abilities. So they start bringing up her past. Well, she goes to bars. Sometimes she hooks up with people. Well, what's that have to do? Well, it creates reasonable doubt. She might have just wanted to hook up with these people and, felt bad about it afterwards. And it's weird that the logic that you have to go to But that's kind of one of the reasons that you need stuff like this, because there are occasions when people have legitimate accusations. They go and they do the right thing. They go to the hospital. They do everything by the book, and because they like to have fun and sometimes engage in some physical enjoyment, on their own time, all of a sudden that damns them, and every experience after that must have been consensual, even when it wasn't.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that we're talking about, these are, in some cases, and I would say the cases, they are consenting adults. The thing is that you don't have the right to jam your morality, whatever it is, your moral system or your ethos or whatever it is, when somebody has been clearly had their personal, their private rights violated. That's the idea that she's fast, and I've heard that in a number of situations. That has nothing to do with when someone is saying no. And let's not let this get lost in the conversation that there are people who have been sexually assaulted and they've never had their voice heard about this. They've never had justice delivered to them because of the cultural mores we've had in all of our cultures all across the world for a very long time. I'm telling you, you know this as well as I do, and some of you out there listen to this. You have heard your elders, you have heard some of your peers say some jacked up stuff when it comes to things of like rape and sexual assault and things along those lines. Things like, oh, she was asking for it. Oh, they should have been wearing that kind of dress. Oh, they shouldn't have been in that situation. And I think what's happening is we're rapidly starting to understand, and people who are engaging in this and thinking it's okay, you need to start understanding, is that the cultural mores on that are changing. They are changing rapidly, and I would say in some cases for the better. Not in terms of the prosecution or the carrying out of it, but at least what the thought is that for many decades, and I'll speak for my personal experience, many decades, you've always heard, well, you got to protect the girls being told they got to protect themselves. Don't wear certain kind of outfits. Watch where you walk and watch it and do this. And there's now a movement that's been for a long time. The thought is, why do we always have to be telling the girls that or the women that? When is it we're going to start saying to the boys and to the men, stop raping this woman. If she doesn't want to be touched, leave her alone. Being an incel is a good thing for you. if you figure out some other way to get around that. But this idea that putting all of the responsibility on the woman to basically keep from getting attacked, as opposed to talking to the would-be attackers or the ones who are thinking about it, say, don't attack somebody. It's a different day. It's a different day, and it's rightfully so. And the only criticism I had of the Me Too movement was when they started adopting that believe the woman stuff, no matter what. I'm like, that's crazy talk. That's absolute crazy talk. Anybody who had half a brain, who had any wisdom whatsoever, and if I'm insulting people, then I'm insulting people. You know where that's going.
You're empowering. You're swinging the pendulum too far. Now you're empowering people and almost incentivizing them to lie. Yeah. Oh, I don't like that guy, or I don't like this person. I can say this, and it's all they don't defend themselves anymore. Yeah, and they understand it. And the thing is, and they understand that. But before the smoke even clears, they will have gotten their revenge. And it's not just women, and it is not just sexual assault. It's just in any area of life. Like like I said, the 3 incidents I went to where it caused great psychological, great physical, great financial damage to not only myself, but to my wife and to my daughters, came from a whole cornucopia of different people in different circumstances where they realized that all they had to do was lodge an accusation out at me. And there would be pretty much half the people that heard it would be like, he did that. We have lost friends behind it. Almost lost familiar relationships behind it, because it comes from a place of just total and outright fear. It's just fear. It's just people operating at fear of and intimidation, which is the other part. It's fear and intimidation, because a lot of times the fear part is that people are like, well, what if they do something and we don't react quickly enough? We don't react, definitively enough, then we'll get sued. And then the intimidation part for the people being accused, it's like, well, I got to say something because I just want it to be over with quick. Unfortunately, it's going to require you to summon a Herculean amount of courage and a Solomonic amount of wisdom to navigate your way through these things. Because once the accusation is made, like Grammy Graham used to say, you can't fight a lie. You can defend against it,
you can maybe blunt it, but you can't actually fight that thing at a certain point. And the only way that you can fight it is much in the case, the example that you gave, if there's actual evidence, photographic or audio evidence that shows that, oh, this is what really happened, or this was the person's motivations and stuff like that. But when this is he said, she said, or he said, or she said, parent, kid said thing, it's game on. And in some cases, game over, because you get the wrong person in front of you. And this is why if I blame anybody in the situation with the mishandling of this, I blame those who are in authority, and the complete and total way they're not good stewards of the authority that have been handed to them, because they have a responsibility more than anybody else involved in these situations to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. If I have to say in all my 3 situations, I definitely have a completely different view of authority than I did before that, which is I got no use for it, because if this is the best those clowns can come up with over the last couple of years that I saw, I'll make my own decisions, and I don't need you to be involved with it. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Hey, I remember everybody was making fun of the Pence rule, right?
Oh yeah.
Hey, I think that's good business sense at this point. Got to protect yourself.
You have to protect yourself, because it's not so much a question of whether you did something right or wrong or not. It's a question of what they can nail you with, and they will try to nail you. When I was in the military,
if I was doing some official counseling, or we were talking about something on the record or something, and it was a female airman, there was going to be another female airman that was my rank or higher to go in there and witness if the door was going to be closed, if the door was going to be open, it was something more informal. Whatever, you can see in here, and we can, I can defend myself, but it just wasn't worth it to take the chance.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes there's stuff you got to walk away. I mean, like when we were going through the situation where one of the legal situations I'm going to, my wife and I, we sat down, we watched this video from this lawyer who said, this is why you should never talk to the police. And he was saying, look, a lot of times people want to talk to the police because they know for a fact that they did nothing wrong. But they just want to tell their story. And it's really in the sense they're like, well, if I just tell the truth, then they'll understand that I'm telling the truth and they'll go away. And he was like, this is the reason why you cannot talk to the police. He says, because the police are legally bound to only use whatever you say, they can only use what you say that they can use against you. They can't use anything that's in your favor. That's not their job. The only things they can use are the things that work against you. So if you said to someone, look, let's say a murder happened on 110th in Harlem, 110th in Lenox, and you said, hey, I was at 108th in Lenox buying a piece of fruit. All they're going to say is he put himself in the vicinity. Let the cops arrest him. It doesn't matter that you were 2 blocks away and you said I was buying a banana at the same time the guy was getting killed. All they can use is you were in the vicinity of 110th and Lenox, and you confess to that, and you're a suspect. Let the games begin. And what is
echo that myself. I've had my rights read to me one time, and I was legitimately, I was very young. I was scared. I said, no, I don't want a lawyer because I'm telling the truth. And after that experience, once I became a sergeant myself and I had airmen that were going to have their rights read to them, I always told them, do not say a word, get you an attorney because you need your representative there. If you have the opportunity to get a lawyer, get a lawyer. It's worth it. Yeah, I'll never make that mistake again. And I will never let anyone else make that mistake again.
Because it's not a bad instinct.
Railroaded, man. I didn't do shit.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's not a bad instinct. Because what gets drilled into us as kids? Always tell the truth. Yes. Always tell the truth. Always tell the truth. So it's not like when they're doing that, like they're doing something that's wrong, because they've been taught that the truth is something that if you tell it, there's something magical that happens that gets you over the finish line. Hopefully, no harm and no foul. But what you start to learn as you become an adult is, and look, and if anybody's done it, don't feel bad about it. It's like if I had said certain things when a DCFS matter came up, I'd probably been better off. But the thing is that we're not taught as we're growing up to not tell the truth under certain circumstances. We're told to tell the truth under every circumstance.
To authority.
And especially to authority. And so that's why I'm done with authority now. Because authority, because authority took full and total advantage. I
walked out of that interrogation. I don't consider it an interrogation. I don't think the Air Force does. When I walked out, I was shell shocked. About 2 hours later, once I realized what had just happened to me, I said, I will never, ever be a piece of shit sergeant like the fucker that just sent me in there. That was supposed to be my boss and my advocate. I was like, what an asshole. Did not say, make sure you get a lawyer.
Yeah. And that's the advice you tell somebody. And you know, because it happened with one of my family members. And I told, exactly. I told him, I said on the phone, I said, stop talking. I said, don't say another word until I get there. Stop talking. Because even people who will say, "Oh, Gevian, you know, they need, you know, it's a daycare situation. They need to know the truth." No, they don't. You wait until I get there and stop talking. If any of you out there are parents,
even
and
if
you
it's
have
a
minor
small
children,
thing, Gevian, a lot of times they're trying to breadcrumb you into something bigger. And you have no idea what they're actually talking to you about.
Oh, no, exactly. No, it's like they have no obligation to look out for your best interests. None. It's not even their job. And that's why I tell people, I say, I tell you about that who's a parent now and you're raising your kids. You tell them that if something bad happens, don't say nothing. And you say, I want to call my mommy and daddy, and then wait until mommy and daddy gets there. And hopefully mommy and daddy have a little bit more wisdom than you do. It ain't the kid. Go ahead.
The police showed up at my nephew's elementary school. He's older now. I think he was 8 years old, and they were showing him what a police officer does, and they fingerprinted every one of the kids there. My nephew shows up at home. My brother sees his hand, and he goes, "Why do you have all that ink on your hand?" Well, the cops came to school, and they showed us how to fingerprint. He goes, "Really?" And he went down to the police station. He goes, No. I'll be seeing my son's fingerprints, and you destroy them before I leave here today. Don't you ever fucking do that again.
Are you serious?
He's like, if you're going to catch my kid, you're going to catch him. It's not because you got his fingerprints lifted when he was 8.
Basically. Basically. Well, that was a whole NYPD Blue episode where, what was it? The guy, Dennis Franz, I forgot the name of the cop, but when he was playing, when his son got arrested, the whole episode was about him keeping him from basically getting registered into the system. Because he was like, once he's in the system, then basically they can pin, Sipowicz, there you go. They basically could pin him for anything or bring him up on anything. And that's what the problem is that, you know, if something happens in your neighborhood, like you could have gone through a legal situation, come through it clear, not guilty, with prejudice and all this other kind of stuff. But the thing is that if something happens in your neighborhood that's similar to the thing that you did before, at the very least, law enforcement can stop by your house and pick you up because they have all this data and information on you. It's like it doesn't, you know, because they'll say, "Oh, this will get expunged." Yeah, it'll get expunged from basically mostly public records,
search
stuff like
warrant
that.
Just for about it. Yeah,
exactly. But in terms of law enforcement, you done, son. It's like you were the system, and if something looks like you did it before, well, he had a prior here, you know, something like this, and they never quite got him on it. Oh, it's over. But you know, the thing is that what's happening is, especially what happened with Me Too, is that the boundaries are now being renegotiated and reestablished, where whether or not women should be believed. How do we deal with sexual assault? What does sexual assault look like? So I'm not a big fan of the whole microaggression language thing, because it's just everything's being weaponized. So it's like, if I see a lady who I think is really wearing the hell out of some dress, it's like, can I say to her, you know, you look really pretty? And it's like, well, that's an unwanted sexual advance. It's like, you know what? Forget I said anything. It's too late now.
In the modern day workspace, if I looked at you, Gevian, we're working together, and I said, "Man, you look good in those pants," and you said, "Thank you." You know, I've lost a little weight, and you had no issues with it, right? Hey, I paid you a compliment, and you appreciated it. But if a third person heard that and they were offended, they could file sexual harassment claims against the person that wasn't even speaking. It's so weird.
No, it has gotten because they assume that, well, the only reason why he was said thank you because he was intimidated by the fact of the sexual aggression coming off of Wes. And it's like, because I was working as a proctor one time at the exam. Hey, look, and to keep it all even, Stephen, I am a cis male. I like women. Okay, I like women. Likes the women. So a guy comes out of the exam that I'm proctoring, and he says, "You know, you're a very handsome man." I said, "Thank you very much." It's like, it's nice to hear that. It's like, it's no big deal. I didn't take it as an offense or something like that, because I know I like women, and if he doesn't know, that's okay. But somebody thinks I'm a handsome man, I feel better that day. I went out and got myself a burger the Sunday. So okay, you know, do it. We're living a dream. But
somebody could have filed sexual harassment.
Somebody could have filed sexual harassment on my behalf. And the thing is, we're taking it And it's like, I'm not intimidated by the compliment. I'm not offended by the compliment. It's like, okay, so guy thinks I'm cute. Hey, whatever, it's the 90s. The simple fact of the matter is we are in a real sense robbing people of their agency in their relationships. But at the same time, we have to recognize there's a long history of particularly women, and we just have to say that particularly women, and in a lot of cases children, who are being, as we speak, sexually abused, sexually violated all the time, and they're being left to deal with that harm and that damage themselves. Because even if they come forward with it, even if they're brave enough to come forward with it and to face all those accusations, all the odds are working against them to basically get any sense of justice. And we just have to start figuring out a better way to do this. But I think the first step is that if accusation is made, should it be taken seriously? Absolutely. But what should also be taken seriously, and I think this is where it falls off, and this is where the authorities come in, the due diligence should be just as serious. And
both
the due diligence
have
isn't.
rights, and they both need to be
Both
protected.
people have rights. Exactly. Both people have rights, and they have to be protected. And we're not protecting everyone's rights. Because honestly, Wes, this has just been my experience, whether dealing with stuff personally, professionally, whatever it is, you should start asking 3 or 4 questions and stuff starts falling apart. It's like, at the very least, you start asking 3 or 4 questions. And I mean, not only from someone making a false accusation, but someone making a true accusation and the person defending against it. It's like, and that's why they tell you, don't say nothing without a lawyer. And that's why the Fifth Amendment exists. So now I'm going to bring Cosby into this, because I know for some people this is a touchy subject, but let's be real about this. I am no fan of Cosby, especially after he gave his pound cake speech for the 50th anniversary of the NAACP. As a black person, I was like, you a bum. But when it came to this whole thing with the rape case and him being locked up, people better understand, whether he does it or not, that man has a real case to sue out of Philadelphia, the state of Philadelphia. He does, because he has a constitutional right, which is called the Fifth Amendment, not to incriminate himself. If they hadn't made that nonsense deal that they gave him to basically give a deposition to be used in the civil suit, from what I understand, so that Ms. Constantine could at least get some restitution or some justice out of it, he would have never did that deposition in the first place. So then for them to go back on that and then prosecute him criminally, basically violating the agreement that he made, using that very deposition, it's like, dude, you violated his Fifth Amendment rights. Because if you hadn't made that promise to him, he wouldn't have said nothing. He wouldn't have said a word. You would have had to get him the old-fashioned way. And even that way is fraught with a bunch of nonsense. But it's like, the reason why those kind of things are in place, as onerous as the outcomes can be, is because you have to look at from the opposite spectrum, which is what happens if someone is being falsely accused. Whether it's by an individual, an agency, or the government, they have to have the right to protect themselves, because some people wield enough power that the accusation is enough to end them. It can ruin their business, their livelihoods, their personal, their family, their personal relationships. A whispered lie is far more powerful than you walking up and knifing somebody in the back. It just is. It just is. And nowadays, everybody, even the people who weaponize it and say, "Oh, me too," then get caught 3 weeks later having said something racist back 10 years ago. Then they're surprised when it comes for them. It's like, what do you think was going to happen? It's called precedent. You set the precedent, here it goes. So like I said, every time we have these conversations, this particular vein, I always say, rest in peace to the Dixie Chicks, who are now known as the Chicks, because that's how bad it got. They couldn't even call themselves the Dixie Chicks no more. It got so tough, because what happened to them was a clear precursor to what we're dealing with now, and nobody decided to pump the brakes. Nobody saw that for what it was, and nobody pumped the brakes. So, hey.
My last words of wisdom on this are, if you're going to go put out a public statement and it's just yours, go find your closest Gen Xer. That's going to be the most cynical person you can find.
There you go.
Tell you every single way that can blow up in your face.
That's right,
go
baby.
Talk to the police. Talk to your uncle or your cousin that's a Gen Xer, and they will tell you why you should go get a lawyer.
So at this point, Gen X is what?
To tell you how everything could go wrong.
Gen X is what now? 40 years and up? What group are we in now? We 45 to 65 or something like that? Yeah, go find a 45 to 65-year-old. Because, baby, we've lived through this change in the culture, which I think is a good change, but it's a very volatile change. It's one that we're making a lot of big mistakes from one end to the other. We have gone from we have lived through from that transition from that 1950s Leave It to Beaver stuff to basically this, I don't even know what you call this stuff now, but just I hate to use the word, but it's scorched earth. Yeah, scorched earth, social media, social justice stuff. I hate using that word, but there's some truth to it. We have seen that transition happen before our eyes. And all we're telling you is this, man, every man for himself and look out for yourself.
Absolutely.
Man,
all right, Gevian, this is an interesting conversation. I imagine.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Some people get upset every time we make a video, no matter how innocuous it is. Somebody gets upset at us, so it's going to happen again. I do appreciate this. Do you have anything final to say?
Yeah, I'll just say this, and one thing, because I don't want to. I don't want to be too. I guess for lack of a better word, negligent about in terms of what actual sexual assault victims go through. I always say this. I've said this to friends who I know personally have gone through, and I say it to anyone who will listen. Is that please report it when it happens. I know there's no guarantee of this. I know it's sometimes going to be a terrible thing to go through, and sometimes you may not get the result that you want. But it's like, please report it when it happens, because there's nothing worse, as we've seen with the Bill Cosby case, when the women haven't said anything and statute of limitations played into it. It's take a chance, have some faith if you can, but please report it so it's out there. So that way, if you do get the right judge, you do get the right people investigating, if things go your way, you will get some sense and measure of justice. But to the other way of not saying anything at all and carrying that burden for so many years and decades, and it affects you personally in your relationship in life, that's no way for anybody to live. But whatever you can to do to get yourself hopefully some measure of justice, please do it. And one thing is to report something when it happens. So I'll leave it at that.